Hi guys, welcome to our Sudhir NEET Biology Academy. I am your Dr. Mohan Nangapan. In this biology series of videos, particularly on human physiology, today we have landed upon another important topic, adrenal gland and its secretions, the structure and its secretions. And today we shall confine ourselves to the main glucocorticoid, cortisol. Right. We shall see the structure of adrenal gland and where it is located, and then we'll come to the cortisol. The adrenal gland is a pea-like structured gland on the top of the kidney. So a pair of adrenal glands on the top of the kidney. So they are also called as the suprarenal glands. Suprarenal glands. If we take a section of the gland, it has got two parts. One outer cortex and then inner medulla. So this is the outer cortex region and then inner medulla region. The cortex region is divided into three parts. One, outer zona glomerulosa, number two, middle zona fasciculata, and then inner zona reticularis. So this adrenal cortex is divided into three parts: outer zona glomerulosa, middle zona fasciculata, and inner zona reticularis. The outer zona glomerulosa secretes mineralocorticoids. So this outer layer, glomerulosa, secretes mineralocorticoids, out of which aldosterone is a very important mineralocorticoid that we'll see in the next video. Zona fasciculata secretes glucocorticoids. Glucocorticoids. There are three types of glucocorticoids: cortisol, corticosterone and cortisone, out of which cortisol is an important glucocorticoid comprising 95% of the glucocorticoid, and the rest, the 5%, constitute corticosterone and cortisone. Okay. So this cortisol is very important glucocorticoid. This is the topic of the day, right? Then zona reticularis, the inner layer, secretes adrenal androgens, sex hormones, adrenal androgens. And then the inner part, medulla, secretes two hormones, adrenaline or epinephrine. Adrenaline are also called as the epinephrine, and noradrenaline or otherwise called as norepinephrine. These two combine together in the form of, it's called as catecholamines. So these two are under the category of catecholamines. So these are the questions may be asked in the NEET area. So it's a very important gland, and then this cortisol is very important, wherein you get more of NEET questions. Right. Now let us take up, as I told you already, today the topic of the day is cortisol, the important glucocorticoid secreted by the middle layer of the adrenal cortex, zona fasciculata. Right. Now, what are the functions of the cortisol? If you take the functions of the cortisol, it's very, very important. Number one, metabolic functions. As you see, three important categories of food: carbohydrate, protein and fat. So this cortisol involves in this metabolism of carbohydrate, protein and fat. Let us take up one by one. First, carbohydrate metabolism. This cortisol increases the blood sugar level. How? In two ways. One, glycogenolysis. So it induces the process of glycogenolysis. That is, the stored glycogen in liver is converted into glucose, and then blood glucose sugar level increases. And number 2, gluconeogenesis. This is the process of forming glucose from non-carbohydrate sources, lactate, amino acid and glycerol. So from these non-carbohydrate sources, glucose is formed. That process is called as the gluconeogenesis. So these two processes are induced by this cortisol. Glycogenolysis, glycogen converted into glucose. Gluconeogenesis, the non-carbohydrate materials are converted into glucose. So this carbohydrate metabolism involves the blood sugar, increase of the blood sugar level. So this hormone cortisol is an hyperglycemic hormone. Hyperglycemics. You must remember this. Number 2, protein metabolism. That means it induces the proteolysis. It induces the process of proteolysis. What is proteolysis? The protein is converted into amino acids. Protein is converted into amino acid, and then another way, it inhibits the absorption of amino acid by the body cells. So amino acids are stored in the body. So by these two ways, it increases the free amino acid level in the blood. So the protein metabolism of cortisol involves the production of free amino acid in the blood. Number 3, fat metabolism. It involves lipolysis. Lipolysis means conversion of fat into fatty acids and glycerol. It increases the fatty acid level in the blood. So by carbohydrate metabolism, it increases blood sugar level. By protein metabolism, it increases amino acid level in the blood. By fat metabolism, the fatty acids are increased in the blood sugar level. So glycogenolysis, gluconeogenesis in carbohydrate metabolism, proteolysis in protein metabolism, and lipolysis in fat metabolism. Then this cortisol is antagonistic to insulin. You know, insulin secreted by the beta cells of the islets of Langerhans or the pancreas. This cortisol is antagonistic to insulin in all these 3 ways. Let us see. What are the insulin function? Insulin decreases the blood glucose level, whereas the cortisol increases the blood sugar level. So insulin is a hypoglycemic hormone, you must remember. And then insulin increases protein synthesis and promotes fat storage, whereas here cortisol breaks down protein into amino acid, breaks down fat into fatty acid. So just opposite, antagonistic to insulin. This is the antagonistic effect of insulin with cortisol. In the NEET examination, the question may be asked. There may be 4 options. Which 2 hormones are antagonistic? Out of which the answer should be cortisol and your insulin. Okay. So insulin and cortisol are antagonistic. This you must remember. Very, very important. You can see this diagram. This is the action of cortisol and this is the action of insulin. So glucose level increases and decreases. Let us see. The action of cortisol from the adipose tissue of skin and from the muscles, it converts the glycogen into glucose. It is hyperglycemic. Whereas the action of insulin, it is hypoglycemic. That means the glucose is converted into glycogen in the muscles and fat in the adipose tissues. So this is the antagonistic effect of cortisol and insulin. You must remember. It is very important area. The question I told you already, the 2 antagonistic hormones, insulin and cortisol. This is the next stage of this cortisol function. And next, it is anti-inflammatory in effect. It gives anti-inflammatory effect. That means it suppresses the synthesis of antibody and inhibits the production of lymphocytes. Anti-inflammatory effect. It retards the phagocytic activities of WBC and suppresses inflammation. So actually, when the inflammation takes place, when there is an injury, the WBC acts upon the bodies to produce antibodies, and then only the inflammation occurs. This cortisol retards the phagocytic activity of the WBC, and so the inflammation is reduced. Anti-inflammatory in action, number one. Number two, it reduces the mast cells, number of mast cells. The mast cells secretes the chemical histamine. So by reducing the number of mast cells, the hormone cortisol also reduces the secretion of histamine. That is a cause for the inflammation. So it is anti-inflammatory in effect. So that's why we know the sports people are taking steroids for getting more result. If you take steroid, what will happen? The carbohydrate metabolism takes place, so instant energy, glycogen is converted into glucose, so you get more energy and no inflammation, and there will be that's not revealed outside. So they take the abuse actually this steroids, but if they take continuously in the long run, what will happen? The immune system will be lost. That is the next point here. Anti-immune effect. It has got an anti-immune effect. It suppresses the immune system of our body. It suppresses the synthesis of the antibody. So antibodies are responsible for fighting against the foreign bodies to produce immunity in our body. So this cortisol suppresses the synthesis of the activity of the antibody itself, and inhibits the production of lymphocytes. The lymphocytes is a kind of WBC. It's responsible for the production of antibodies, and it's responsible for the production of T cells for immune system. So cortisol inhibits the production of lymphocytes. So in two ways it affects our immune system. One, by suppresses the synthesis of the antibody. Number two, by inhibiting the production of the lymphocytes. So that's why if you take the the cortisol or steroid hormone regularly, the sports people, their immune system will be lost, and finally they will lose their life. And then it also helpful in erythropoiesis, the process of RBC formation, erythrocyte formation. It also helps in the formation of the RBC formation in bone marrow. And next function, it maintains cardiovascular system. It maintains the heartbeat. Actually, it increases the blood pressure and maintains the cardiovascular system, and it also maintains the kidney functions. So these are all the main functions of the cortisol. I repeat for your convenience: metabolic function, carbohydrate metabolism, protein metabolism, fat metabolism, gluconeogenesis, proteolysis, lipolysis. And then cortisol and insulin are antagonistic to each other. How? Cortisol is hyperglycemic, insulin is hypoglycemic. Cortisol increases amino acid level, insulin increases protein synthesis, cortisol increases the fatty acid level, breaks down the fat, whereas insulin increases the fat storage. So these two are antagonistic. And then anti-immune effect, by suppressing the synthesis of antibody, inhibiting the production of the lymphocytes. And then anti-inflammatory effect, three ways: retards the phagocytic activities of WBC, and suppresses the inflammation. It reduces the number of mast cells which produce the histamine, which is responsible for the inflammation. And then it helps in the erythropoiesis, maintains cardiovascular system, and maintains kidney functions. These are all about the cortisol functions. So cortisol is a hormone produced by the adrenal cortex. It is an important glucocorticoid. 95% of the glucocorticoid is by cortisol. Now let us come to the disorder of the adrenal cortex, hyposecretion and hypersecretion of the adrenal cortex. First, let us take up hyposecretion of the cortex region of the adrenal gland. That means hypoadrenalism. The secretion is less. The secretion of glucocorticoids are less. That leads to the disease Addisons disease. Very important. Hyposecretion leads to Addisons disease. If the aldosterone, so one of the mineralocorticoids, if the level of aldosterone goes down, that leads to hyperkalemia. What is hyperkalemia? That is the reduction of the potassium level. Serum potassium level goes down. Or hyperkalemia, it goes up. That affects the heart. That is very dangerous. So Addison's disease, one, if the aldosterone is less, it leads to hyperkalemia. Okay. If both the aldosterone and cortisol are less in secretion, then the ACTH, adenocortic trophic hormone, will be more. That is a negative feedback mechanism. By the secretion of ACTH, MSH, melanocytic stimulating hormone, will also be raised. This leads to the pigment problem. That leads to the bronze pigmentation. So that's why the Addison's disease people will be having bronze pigmentation on the body. And then third, weight loss and hypoglycemia. Sugar level will come down. So this is about the Addison's disease. I repeat, Addison's disease, what are the indications? Hyperadrenalism. If aldosterone is alone, less in amount, hyperkalemia, the potassium level, serum potassium level will increase, that will affect the heart. If both aldosterone and cortisol both are low in secretion, then this leads to the pigment problem, bronze pigmentation. Third point, weight loss. Fourth indication, hypoglycemia. Blood sugar level will come down. Then let us come to hypersecretion of the cortex. More secretion. That leads to a syndrome called Cushing Syndrome. Cushing Syndrome. What are the indications of the Cushing Syndrome? One, blood glucose level will increase, hyperglycemic. So here hypoglycemia in Addison's disease, whereas in Cushing Syndrome, blood sugar level increases, hyperglycemia. Then that leads to adrenal diabetes. Adrenal diabetes. And then due to muscle weakness, proteolysis, due to proteolysis, the muscle weakness will come for these people having Cushing syndrome. The shoulder will be broader, but the muscles are somewhat weakened due to the proteolysis. And then immunity power is lost. Immune system is affected, then immune system will come down. Immune power will come down. And then all over the body, purplish striations will be there. Purplish striations will be there. And then another important external feature, you can see fat deposition on the upper part of the body. So more fat on the body, and on the chest. So it is ideally called as the moon facie and buffalo torso. That means moon facie. The face will be round like a moon with blushiness. with more muscles. That is moon face shape, and then buffalo torso. You know buffalo, ermamadu. So buffalo torso, the chest portion will be larger, heavier. So these are the indications of the disease Cushing syndrome. I repeat, for hypersecretion of the cortex, Cushing syndrome, blood glucose level increases, hyperglycemia, that leads to adrenal diabetes. Due to proteolysis, muscle weakness takes place, and then immunity power will come down, immune system will be affected, and then purplish striations will be there all over the body, and then fat deposition on the fat and on the chest region, that is established as moon fascia and buffalo torso. Fascia means face, torso means the upper part. So these are all the disorders. These two are the disorders of the adrenal cortex, hypo and hypersecretion. Hyposecretion, Addisons disease; hypersecretion, Cushing syndrome. So these are all about the cortisone, adrenal cortex secreting the hormone, the glucocorticoid, important cortisol.